Imagine a luxury ocean liner, celebrated as the pride of Italy, embarking on what seemed like just another routine voyage. But on a foggy night in 1956, the Andrea Doria met its tragic fate in one of the most infamous maritime disasters of the 20th century. This is the story of a ship that once symbolized elegance and safety, only to become a sunken graveyard and one of the most dangerous wrecks for divers in history. Welcome to Shipwreck History. The SS Andrea Doria was named after a 16th-century Genoese admiral, symbolizing strength and maritime prowess. Built by the Italian line at the Ansaldo shipyard in Genoa, the ship was launched in 1951 and entered service in 1953. At 697 feet long and weighing over 29,000 tons, it was a marvel of modern engineering for its time. The Andrea Doria was designed to be the epitome of luxury and safety, with advanced radar systems, 11 watertight compartments, and a double-hull features that were meant to prevent the kind of disasters that had claimed ships like the Titanic. The interior of the Andrea Doria was nothing short of spectacular. With 3 classes of cabins, the ship catered to everyone from wealthy elites to everyday travelers. The first-class section boasted grand dining rooms, luxurious cabins, swimming pools, and even an art collection that included works by renowned Italian artists. The birth of a legend encapsulates the Andrea Doria's rise to fame. It was not just a mode of transportation. It was a floating palace, promising comfort and style across the Atlantic. These initial voyages solidified the Andrea Doria's status as a masterpiece, embodying the post-war optimism and a return to the golden age of ocean liners. She was a symbol of hope and renewal for Italy. But beneath the surface, the seeds of tragedy were already sown, as the very features designed to ensure her safety would later contribute to her downfall. Her story would take a tragic turn, forever cementing her place in maritime history. These early voyages of the Andrea Doria laid the groundwork for a tale that would ultimately be remembered not only for its luxury and innovation, but also for the dramatic end that awaited. On July 25, 1956, the Andrea Doria was nearing the end of its 101st transatlantic voyage, heading toward New York City. It carried 1,706 passengers and crew, all eager to disembark and start a new chapter on American soil. But as the ship sailed off the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts, it entered a dense fog. Captain Piero Calamai, aware of the danger, reduced the ship's speed and ordered the foghorns to sound regularly. Meanwhile, the Swedish-American liner MS Stockholm was heading eastward, bound for Gothenburg. The Stockholm was equipped with radar, as was the Andrea Doria, but a series of misunderstandings and errors in judgment led to a catastrophic collision course. Differences in interpretation of radar readings played a critical role in the events leading up to the crash. The officers on the Andrea Doria, including Captain Calamai, believed that the Stockholm was on a parallel course, passing safely to the port side. This misjudgment was compounded by the decision to maintain a certain speed despite the poor visibility, a common practice at the time, but one that proved fatal in this instance. On the Stockholm, the crew also misinterpreted the radar information. Unlike the Andrea Doria, the Stockholm's radar was not set to a long-range scale, causing the crew to underestimate the distance between the two vessels. As a result, they made a course change that brought the Stockholm directly into the path of the Andrea Doria. Both ships were unaware of the impending collision until it was too late. The Andrea Doria's crew, confident that they were on a safe course, took no immediate action to alter their path, while the Stockholm, thinking it was avoiding the Italian liner, actually turned towards it. The final moments before the collision were marked by desperate, hard turns by both ships, but by then, the distance was too short to avoid impact. At 11:10 p.m., the two ships collided. The Stockholm's reinforced icebreaker at the front of the ship sliced through the starboard side of the Andrea Doria at almost a 90-degree angle, creating a massive gash nearly 40 feet wide. The force of the impact sent shockwaves through the Andrea Doria, instantly flooding several of its watertight compartments, causing it to list to the starboard side. Chaos erupted on board as passengers and crew scrambled to evacuate, and there were moments of sheer terror as people tried to reach safety. The list was so severe that it rendered half of the ship's lifeboats unusable, as they were either submerged or impossible to lower. The ship's captain quickly realized the extent of the damage and the seriousness of the situation. Knowing the Andrea Doria was doomed, he ordered the crew to begin an evacuation. However, the steep list made it extraordinarily difficult for the crew to launch the remaining lifeboats on the port side, which were now tilted dangerously towards the sea. But amidst the chaos, stories of bravery and humanity emerged. Despite the challenges, the crew, along with volunteers among the passengers, worked tirelessly to get as many people into the lifeboats as possible. Meanwhile, distress calls were sent out and the nearby ships, including the Isle de France, responded. The Isle de France arrived on the scene just after midnight and played a crucial role in the rescue operation, lighting up the night sky with its powerful searchlights and providing lifeboats to ferry survivors from the listing Andrea Doria. The Stockholm, despite its own damage, also participated in the rescue, taking aboard several hundred survivors. The sinking of the Andrea Doria was one of the first major maritime disasters to unfold in real time through television and radio broadcast, bringing the public closer to the tragedy. As news of the collision spread, live coverage showed the dramatic rescue efforts, capturing the attention of millions. Reporters gave updates as the other ships raced to the scene to save passengers, and viewers anxiously followed the fate of the sinking liner. The public response was a mixture of shock and awe at the scale of the disaster, but also admiration for the heroic efforts of rescue crews. Throughout the night, as the rescue operations continued, the Andrea Doria's condition worsened. Water continued to pour into the ship, and the list increased until it was clear the ship would not remain afloat much longer. By around 5 a.m., the last lifeboat had left the Andrea Doria, and all those who could be saved had been evacuated. 1,660 of the 1,706 people on board were rescued. But tragically, 46 souls perished that night, either from the initial impact or from being trapped on the sinking ship. At 10:09 a.m., nearly 11 hours after the collision, the Andrea Doria finally succumbed to the sea, capsizing and sinking stern first into the Atlantic Ocean. Just a week after the sinking, divers located the wreck and photographed it for Life magazine. Its final resting place is at a depth of 240 feet. As news spread of the tragic sinking of the Andrea Doria, a remarkable story emerged. A story that became a symbol of hope amidst disaster. 12-year-old Linda Morgan, later known as the Miracle Girl, was sleeping in her cabin when the collision occurred. The force of the impact was so great that it flung Linda from her bed on the Andrea Doria onto the Stockholm, the very ship that had struck them. Miraculously, she landed on the deck of the Stockholm, suffering only a broken arm, while tragically, her mother and sister, who had been in the same cabin, were lost. Linda's incredible survival became one of the most talked about stories following the disaster, capturing the hearts of people around the world. Her story is a poignant reminder of the randomness of fate. How, in the midst of such overwhelming tragedy, life can find a way. After the Andrea Doria tragedy, legal battles ensued to determine responsibility for the disaster. Both ships involved were under scrutiny, and investigations revealed that multiple errors contributed to the collision. The Andrea Doria's radar was misread, and the ship was traveling faster than it should have been in a heavy fog. While the Stockholm, despite detecting the Andrea Doria on radar, made a course adjustment that ultimately worsened the situation. Each crew believed they were veering away from a potential collision, but due to misunderstandings in interpreting radar data and incorrect assumptions about each other's actions, disaster struck. The litigation became highly complex, with both sides attempting to avoid full accountability. Under maritime law, the responsibility was ultimately shared. Both ships were found to be at fault, the Andrea Doria for its speed in dense fog, and the Stockholm for miscalculating its course change. The legal proceedings stretched over several years, with survivors and families of the victims receiving compensation through settlements rather than a clear winner being declared in court. While the lawsuits concluded, the emotional toll and lingering questions of how the tragedy could have been avoided remained. The sinking of the Andrea Doria shocked the world and led to significant changes in maritime safety. The disaster exposed the limitations of radar technology at the time and highlighted the need for better communication and training in avoiding collisions at sea. The Andrea Doria became a symbol of both the grandeur and fragility of ocean liners, a reminder that even the most advanced ships can fall victim to the unpredictable nature of the sea. The Andrea Doria's wreck lies on its starboard side, eerily preserved in the cold, dark waters of the Atlantic. In the years following the disaster, numerous salvage operations have been conducted on the wreck, recovering everything from the ship's bell to personal items belonging to passengers. For decades, it has been a magnet for divers, drawn by the allure of exploring a piece of history. But the wreck is far from a tranquil underwater museum. It's a perilous tomb. Diving the Andrea Doria is often referred to as the Mount Everest of diving. The reasons for this are numerous. The strong currents, poor visibility, and the depth at which the wreck lies make it one of the most challenging for divers around the world. The ship's deterioration over the years has turned it into a labyrinth of twisted metal, with jagged edges and unstable structures. Many divers have become entangled in the wreckage, and tragically, over a dozen have lost their lives while attempting to explore the site. The dangers don't stop there. The wreck is slowly collapsing, making each dive more unpredictable. And as the Andrea Doria continues to deteriorate, valuable artifacts and pieces of the ship's history are being lost forever, swallowed by the relentless ocean. In 2016, now deceased OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush made an expedition to the wreck. He commented on the ship's advanced decay, with pieces of the bow breaking off from the ship. Today, the wreck of the Andrea Doria is in a state of significant decay. The once proud liner is now a crumbling relic, with much of its structure collapsing under the weight of the sea. While it still draws the attention of experienced divers, the risks involved have only increased over time. The story of the Andrea Doria is one of ambition, tragedy, and the relentless power of the ocean. From its celebrated launch to its tragic sinking and its enduring legacy as a dangerous wreck, the Andrea Doria continues to captivate the imagination of those who hear its story. As we reflect on the lives lost and the lessons learned, the Andrea Doria remains a haunting reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature and the enduring allure of the sea. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for all things shipwrecks, and hit the bell notification to get notified when we upload a new video. Until next time, keep exploring.